Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing today. And I would like to pick up where Mr. Lambert was. You just said that if a private company did what they should have done, there would be no problem. What I would submit to you likewise, that if the EPA had done what they should have done, we would not have had this spill. So there ought to be equal consequences for the EPA, just as there are to private citizens. And I cannot believe for 1 minute that the EPA would not aggressively go after another group, another company, a private company who was involved in cleaning up a potential environmental hazard, particularly if they did not have the experience and expertise of doing so, and they created a problem such as the EPA created. You would go after them, and there would be heads rolling, so to speak. And yet that is precisely what the EPA is now guilty of. And to this point, nothing at all has happened. And you said you're treating yourself, the EPA, the same as you do other companies, and quite frankly, that is just not the case. Have you read the summary report of the internal review of the blowout?
Yes, I have, sir.
Okay. You may recall on page 2, the last sentence there, it says, the team conducted a limited review of Internet resources to determine if there are existing guidelines or procedures for investigating sites with similar characteristics as this site. So obviously the EPA does not have experience in cleaning up mines such as this. I had to refer to the Internet. The expertise apparently is restricted to Google. Is that correct?
I'll have to look at the exact sentence you're reading, but the on-scene coordinator has extensive mining engineering expertise, and we worked with the Colorado Division of Reclamation and Mining and Safety, who have considerable expertise as well, including
well, according to your own,
that area.
According to the report, the summary review, EPA relied upon Internet resources to figure out what to do in this scenario, and that's according to what you have submitted. Let me ask you this. According to the Federal Tort Claims Act, are you familiar with the discretionary function exemption?
No, sir.
Okay, that is a legal loophole within the law that would allow the EPA to get out of having to pay for any damages. And my question to you was whether or not the EPA plans to utilize that exemption. But well, you're saying you're not familiar with it.
I'm not an expert in the claims process. I apologize if we need to answer your questions in more detail.
Okay, well then my question to you is, that is a legal loophole in the law. Will you commit to us today that the EPA will not utilize that loophole and that you will pay for damages?
We will work with DOJ to compensate as appropriate. I do not.
Will you not utilize?
Will
you not utilize a legal loophole to get out of it?
I can't say that I'll do something against the law. I'm sorry, sir. I can't do that. But
no, this is in the law. I just don't want the EPA utilizing a loophole to get out of what you are responsible.
I'm not going to try to get out of any of my responsibilities.
Okay. Are you familiar with Greensboro, Georgia, in my district? There was a similar experience about 6 months ago where the EPA likewise had a contractor that made a mistake, and they struck a water main, and lead, arsenic, mercury, all sorts of things went into the Oconee River and Lake. Are you familiar with that?
I don't recall it.
Okay, it's another example of the EPA having a similar problem. And, Mr. Chairman, I would like unanimous consent for this Fox News report to be added.
Without objection.
Thank you, sir. I would just conclude, because I know we're in a hurry here, but you have stated that you are taking full responsibility for this spill. And in light of the criminal charges, the prison sentences, the incredible fines that others have experienced for much less, and many of those examples have been brought forth today, much smaller accidents, Ms. McCarthy, in the interest of fairness to the American people who have experienced the wrath of the EPA for much smaller scenarios and accidents in this, I think it's only appropriate that you would resign as a statement of fairness for what other Americans have experienced for much smaller incidents. Mr. Chairman, I thank you. With that, I yield.
Yields back. Mr. Lamont.